My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And once again, we're looking at the comparison between Romans 8, that's where we're focused, and 1 Corinthians 15. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15 that the resurrection would be when sin, the sting of death, would be overcome. To deal with sin is to deal with death. Paul said in Romans chapter 8, those who are in the flesh, i.e. those who walk according to the flesh, not those who are in physical bodies, those who are in the flesh cannot be pleasing to God. That is, those who are in sin are under the power of the sting of death. To be released from that power, that sin, is to be delivered from this sting of death and to stand in the state where that Paul describes, there is therefore now no condemnation. Well, if there is no condemnation, what does that mean? Well, it means, Romans 8, the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the law of sin and death. Now, once again, Paul's talking proleptically, that is to say, he's put it another way, he's talking about the already and the not yet. He is talking about what had begun when they came into Christ by being baptized into Christ's death, into his burial, into his resurrection. Now then, I want to read to you some of Paul's words over and over and over again in formal public debate and in countless private discussions. And in discussions of the deliverance from the flesh, deliverance from the body, or deliverance of the body, people have insisted that Paul is focused on the biological body, on human flesh being delivered. Well, let's try that out. Paul says, verse 6, Romans 8, to be carnally minded. Now that's from the Greek word, the word carnal, it's from sarx, means fleshly. Now he's already just talked about not walking according to the flesh, not living a life according to the flesh. So he says, to be fleshly minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Notice that he's talking about minded. Okay? Minded. Fleshly minded, spiritually minded. Now watch this, verse 7, because the carnal, and once again, that's from sarx, flesh, the fleshly mind is enmity. It is at odds. It's the enemy, if you please, against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, indeed cannot be. Why? Because it stands opposed to everything that God loves. Can't get off into that. Now watch this. So then, those who are in the flesh, those who are in sarx, flesh. 2017, June, I had a debate with Dr. David Hester. And in the debate, I pointed out that Dr. David Hester condemned the New International Version of Romans chapter 8 because it talks about living a life opposed to God for flesh. And he said, listen, that is absolutely not right. When you see the word sarx or flesh, it's talking about this. Talking about human flesh. Well, that's a major problem. Notice what Paul says, those who are in the sarx, flesh, cannot please God. So you have men like David Hester. By the way, he's not the only one that takes that view. So many people, when they see the word flesh, they automatically think this. The human biological body of skin, flesh, blood, and bones. That is not Paul's doctrine of flesh. After all, those who are in the flesh cannot please God. Now, compare this, folks, with what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, when he said, flesh and blood cannot enter the kingdom. Here is Paul saying, those who are in the flesh cannot please God. We have Paul saying in 1 Corinthians 15, flesh and blood cannot enter the heaven. Folks, these are directly parallel passages. But it's absolutely, I think, stunningly and irrefutably, undeniably obvious that Paul is not talking about biological flesh, blood, and bone. He is talking about those who are living in, to reiterate, the body of flesh, those whose mind is fleshly, who walk according to the flesh, live a life opposed to the will of God, who are the enemies of God through wicked works in their minds. Colossians 1:19 and following. Ephesians 2:1 and following. Do you see where Paul's doctrine of flesh, thus body, and that versus of that body of death, the body of flesh being the body of death, stands opposed to the body of life? The spiritual mind is life and peace. Flesh and blood cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. But as we have borne, that's an aorist active indicative, if memory serves me correctly. Let us, it's in the subjunctive in the majority of Greek text, let us put on the image of the heavenly. Folks, that's what Paul's saying in Romans chapter 8. Put off the fleshly mind, which is the body of death. Put on the mind of Christ, which is life and peace. We have borne the image of the earthy. What is the image of the earthy? The fleshly mind that stands opposed to God. Let us therefore, put it off, continue to put that off. As Paul said in Ephesians chapter 4, put off therefore the old man, which is corrupt, Phthora. Put on the new man. That's 1 Corinthians 15. As we have borne, let us put on. Is it not more than obvious that Paul is not dealing with biological, physical flesh and blood versus a non-corporeal spirit? He's talking about a mind and a life of flesh, living a life opposed to God, versus the life of the Spirit, which is life, which is peace. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, he even gets better, if possible, as we continue our study of Romans 8 and 1 Corinthians 15. But do you see how Paul is talking about putting off the body of death, which is the body of sin, which is the sting of death? And Paul says, put that off. Why? Because to be spiritually minded is life. When you deal with sin, you deal with death. And as we shall see as we continue in our study of Romans 8, Paul is dealing with the putting away of sin at the parousia. Thus, he was talking about dealing with sin, dealing with death. But again, not biological flesh and blood bodies versus non-corporeal physical bodies. No. A life lived according to the flesh, against the Spirit. A life lived according to the Spirit. A life that is life and peace. Yes, we've got more. We'll see you on the flip side.